Hello and welcome to the episodes 1 to 3 of the reality docu-series Harry and Meghan, or Meghan and Harry. The first episode opens with a video of Harry in March of 2020, just after the couple left their senior positions as royals. He calls out the racist attacks against Meghan and his son Archie. He says that it's his duty as well to expose the bribery and the corruption that goes on in the media world. Meghan is in Vancouver Island at this time, and the whole tone is very somber. She says that she just wants to get to the other side of this, and she says that they, meaning the press I guess, are destroying them. After the credits, which includes a lot never before seen footage and photos, we see Meghan and Harry on a couch, and this is where they conduct kind of like the confessional part of their interview, or the narration part, as they talk us through all the events of the past couple of years. Then we see their garden at their home in Montecito. They go for a walk with their son, Meghan feeds the chickens, etc. She says that people haven't gotten a sense of who she is or who they are as a couple, and a friend had suggested that they document the whole process from the time that they left the royal family. So we go back to 2016 then, the year that they met. Meghan is still on Suits, which had been renewed for another season, and Harry and Meghan actually met on Instagram. He saw a video that she was in, and eventually through a kind of mutual friend, got chatting, then they exchanged numbers, and then they agreed to go on a date. Harry was about an hour late for the first date because he got stuck in traffic, but the date went really well. And they also took a photo at the place that Meghan says signifies them agreeing to give this a go. Harry is already thinking at this point, this might be the one. Then we get to Harry's royal birth back in 1984. There are a lot of home videos of him as a toddler with William and his parents. He says that he remembers his childhood as a very happy one, but he doesn't have a lot of early memories of his mom. He remembers being swarmed by the paparazzi a lot. There is some talk about the monarchy in general and Queen Elizabeth, Harry's gran, and her reign. It's very boring if you're not into this kind of stuff. There's also the divorce announcement of Diana and Charles in 1992, and life got even more difficult for her, which is something that they talk about. Harry talks about wondering if anyone would be willing to handle the baggage that comes with being with him. Then they talk about their courtship, getting to know each other. Harry talks about how similar Meghan is to his mom. You know, they both have those qualities of compassion and warmth. Then they cover the death of Princess Diana in 1997, and Harry says he kind of had to be two people. Behind closed doors, he was the grieving son, and he was also a public figure who had to be kind of stoic. You know, it's a bit of a spectacle, as everybody, the press and the British people, are all just watching, gawking really. Anyway, those scenes of the boys in the aftermath of their mother's death were really heartbreaking to see. And there's also one point where Diana is kind of trying to plead with the paparazzi to just please give her family some peace, to please leave the boys alone. They've been followed around all day at that point, and she just wanted to have a holiday with her boys. Then we see Harry in his teen years as he parties with friends. His social life is splashed all over the papers. He goes to Lesotho then for the first time in 2004, and he talked at the time about being inspired by his mother, and he's been going back there every year since, and he spends quite a lot of time there. Then in 2016, Harry invites Meghan with him to Botswana to live in a tent for 5 days. Then there's a lot of discussion about their early days of dating. The friends are talking about it, the logistics of the relationship, and how they made it work in those early days, keeping it a secret at this point still, because they just wanted to enjoy the relationship outside of the public eye. Then news breaks in October and everything changes, and that's the end of episode 1. Episode 2 opens with them traveling somewhere in a car, and there are some concerns about a paparazzi guy on a scooter following them. After the credits, we meet Doria, Meghan's mom. She says that she's ready to have her voice heard, and she talks about the early days of their relationship as Meghan is being introduced to the wider world, her activism, her acting career, and she's also talking about how the tabloids just exploded. Meghan and her mom talk about some of her childhood in LA as they go on a drive around their old neighborhood. She goes back to her old school and visits her principal, who comes out to greet her and have a chat. She also talks about how she wrote a letter to a detergent company that inspired them to change their advert to make it less sexist, I think. Obviously, race is mentioned because a lot of the articles written in the British press, even when things were still fairly positive, did have either racist undertones or were just overtly racist, actually. Meghan then talks about figuring out where she fit in as a mixed race person, and she also talks about being a daddy's girl, and we see some home footage of them in her early teens. Then we get the time that she was on Suits and her blog, The Tig, more of her volunteer work and activism, and their activism as a couple, and this is what they actually bonded over. They talk about how Harry proposed. They kept it a secret all for a while, even the proposal announcement, because it was going to be announced publicly in a couple of weeks. All of this kind of coincided with Brexit. Brexit debates, immigration debates. So while there's like this excitement and romance in the air, it's all happening against the backdrop of growing anti-immigrant sentiment. In episode 3, the couple talks a little bit about the engagement and how welcoming Harry's family was. Then some historian types talk about the colonial history of the British Empire. We also see their first royal walkabout. The press was really positive at this time. The British public were welcoming, and even the couple themselves admit that it was a happy time. They talk about the invisible contract then that they need to perform for the press sometimes, but the press is obviously intrusive and nasty, and Meghan's mom and her childhood friend talk about how the press was trying to get them to talk. Meghan's niece also makes an appearance. She's Meghan's estranged sister's daughter, and they had a really close relationship. You see, Meghan had always wanted a sister, and they became very close, and they traveled together a lot. The Princess Michael of Kent and her racist brooch that she wore was mentioned as well. And then, of course, Harry talks about one of the biggest mistakes of his life when he wore that Nazi costume to a Halloween party. He's really contrite about this. He went and spoke to Holocaust survivors afterwards, and he learned, I guess. Then we get to his time in the military. They also go to a military base as a couple, and they talk to some veterans about their experiences. There's a bit more about some of the causes that Meghan champions, like women's issues. And we saw how the press would just kind of make up all these protocols that Meghan was supposedly breaking, like not wearing pantyhose or wearing the wrong color nail polish. Meghan says that there was no princess training, so she had to learn everything fairly quickly. How to wave, she googled the national anthem. They talk at length about the comms team that was shared with Will and Kate, and the communications team basically deals with all of the PR and press stuff and how they should manage to, I don't know, keep the optics neutral, at least. Then it's time for the wedding, and we get a little breakdown of how Meghan's father accepted money from the tabloids to stage photos, then he lied about it. Then he had this medical emergency, he wasn't able to make it to the wedding, and he couldn't walk her down the aisle, and she found out about this from the press. At this time, Meghan and Harry are trying to get a hold of him, but he kind of goes MIA, and it's quite obvious by the tone of his texts, Meghan says, that this isn't her father anymore. Somebody is answering on his behalf, and their communications have been compromised. Anyway, episode 3 ends with the build up to the wedding, I guess. And that is the first 3 episodes. I honestly didn't leave out a lot. This was it. Anyway, if you've seen it, feel free to share your thoughts, and thank you for watching.